You've spelunked into the Matt Cave.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, seasons are ending. The NBA is officially over today as I record this, and then the NHL ends this coming Thursday. So, a couple of seasons ending. The two of the three professional teams in Utah will be wrapping up their regular seasons, mercifully in one instance, and excitingly in the other. Real Salt Lake, there is no news for them this week because MLS is off, and then they will return this coming Saturday. And then, other than that, some transfer portal news for BYU. They got a huge commitment out of the transfer portal after losing their entire starting lineup, which was always going to happen. I'm going to address that today as well. But thank you all so much for being here. As always, please like, comment, subscribe wherever it is, however you listen. 5 stars, updates, comments. They don't even need to be coherent. Just the algorithm needs those comments. So thank you so much for everything you've done for me thus far and continue to do for me each and every week. You guys are awesome. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. That is the Matt Cave Podcast, as well as on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's start with the Utah Jazz. Their season will come to an end, finally, and maybe the tank is over. There's a lot of signals coming out of the Jazz's front office that it's done. Whatever they get in this draft is whatever they get. It's whoever they get. And so looking forward to next season, you look at the roster, and the roster, it doesn't look like it's going to win a championship. It doesn't look like it's going to get further than the Donovan Mitchell era, but it's going to be better than anything the Jazz have had in the previous, 4 seasons? So, and now that the NBA has kind of targeted Utah as far as anti-tanking crap goes, and you can go back to any number of episodes of this show and listen to my opinion on how the NBA has handled this. Hint, it's poorly, and I have many gripes with ESPN, NBA, just a lot of gripes. I might do a redux here during the offseason when the Jazz get, they get screwed out of a pick. I'm just going to say it. They're going to get things messed up. So, but the Jazz won a game. They won fan appreciation night that the Jazz did. It should have been a fan appreciation season. They shouldn't have charged money for those tickets. They shouldn't have charged money for Jazz Plus. They should have refunded ticket prices to a bunch of people, but they didn't. But anyway, so they beat the Grizzlies, and it didn't really do anything for their standings. But going back to my original point here, the roster. So we look at the roster, the potential starting lineup that the Jazz are going to have next season. Obviously, it's going to be Lauri Markkanen. He is the fulcrum. He is the focal point of the team. So he's going to start. And this season, when he played in half the games, roughly. He played 42 games. He scored 26.7 points per game. That's pretty good. And he also had almost 7 rebounds a game at 6.9. So yes, he is all-star caliber. He is very, very good. And when he gets to play a full season, we'll be reminded of how good Lauri Markkanen has become. Then, obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr., the big trade that the Jazz got at the trade deadline that came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting it. And he's under contract for a while as well, so he's not a rental. He's not a mercenary. That is a big get because he is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate every year he plays. He's not going to be hit with nagging injuries next season because he's had a couple of procedures. I'm never going to call a surgery a minor procedure. Anytime you go under the knife, it's not minor. But he's had a couple of procedures done to help him with his nagging injuries that he's had the past couple of seasons in Memphis when they were trying to make the playoffs. So he's going to be back and pretty much fully healthy and not counted on to be the sidekick, right? He was counted on to be the sidekick to John Morant in Memphis. That's not going to be the case in Utah. He's going to have his role, and he's going to fulfill it very well. And in the 3 games he played for Utah, he scored 22.3 points per game as well. So he's no slouch on offense either. It's not like he's Rudy Gobert. So you got those two guys manning the forward positions. and Jaren Jackson Jr. if Utah can re-sign Walker Kessler, which I think they can, especially if they signal to him that, hey, the rebuild's over, the tanking's done, we're going to be going for it next season. I think he's going to re-sign because you can see the talent on the roster. So if Walker Kessler re-signs, then he's not going to have to play the 5. That's Walker Kessler's role. So you're going to have a huge front court with Lauri Markkanen, who's basically 7 feet, Walker Kessler, who's like 7'2", and Jaren Jackson Jr., who's like 6'10". That's a huge front court. And Lauri Markkanen is not going to be counted on to play power forward either. So he can play small forward. That's fantastic. So you have those 3 guys manning the front court. And Walker Kessler's had an entire season to get right. He had that major procedure at the start of this season. And now the Jazz is, no matter what happens in the draft, the Jazz have to re-sign Walker Kessler. I think that is their 1A thing they have on their offseason board, is to re-sign Walker Kessler. He's a restricted free agent at the end of the season, so that is project number 1 for them. So that's your starting 3. I believe Keyonte George will be your starting point guard. He made a humongous leap this season. I'm not as high on him as a lot of people have been, because it's tough to know if this is going to be A, sustainable, and B, how he's going to mesh with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen and Ace Bailey. I'm not a big fan of score-first point guards. I'm not. And at best, he's a very undersized shooting guard. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits. He's obviously a starter. He's obviously good enough. He's earned that role. So he's going to be your 4th starter. And then who's going to play shooting guard? I would like to see Ace Bailey start. That would make the Jazz's starting 5 gigantic. And the defense that Will Hardy likes to run, and he hasn't been able to really do it, is switch. He runs a switch defense, which means everybody guards every position. And when you have the right personnel to do it, which he will next season, it's a very effective defense. It's just he hasn't had those players. He hasn't had a healthy squad. He's had guys being rested, so he hasn't been able to really show his coaching chops. He showed them in the first half of the first 2 seasons of this tank, but that kind of ran counterintuitive to what the Jazz needed to get done. But anyway, that's what we have there for your starting 5. So you got Walker Kessler at the 5. You got Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4. Lauri Markkanen playing the swingman position at 3. And then you got Ace Bailey at the shooting guard and Keyonte George as your point guard. That's a pretty darn solid starting 5. Coming off the bench is pretty exciting too. Whoever they get in the draft. And then you got Bryce Sensabaugh, who is basically Jordan Clarkson 2.0, who can... He's not as good at getting his own shot, but he's pretty good at getting to his spot. So Bryce Sensabaugh, I don't know if I ever called him a bust, but I think what was expected of him was a little bit too much because he was a lottery pick and whatnot. But Bryce Sensabaugh coming off the bench. Then you got Isaiah Collier, who is a point guard. He will be coming off the bench as well for that second unit. Kyle Filipowski, he's pretty darn good when he fulfills his role, which is basically offense. He's not a very good defender, and he's kind of slow. But when you're coming off the bench, you're not expected to be Scottie Pippen. You have your role, and when he fills it, he's pretty darn good. He's got a really good shooting percentage as well. Then you got Yusuf Nurkic, who is a veteran who will be able to kind of slow down the game for the younger guys, which is what he did this year. He averaged a double-double for the Jazz when he played. He had almost 11 points a game and 10 rebounds a game. Plus, he had almost 5 assists. So, Yusuf Nurkic is kind of reminding people what he used to be. That's a pretty good second unit. And then even deeper on the bench could be Cody Williams, bust, but, I mean, if you can continue to develop him, he could be a solid defender coming off the bench. Could be. So, the team is looking pretty encouraging next season, dare I say it. Bez Mbang, who just signed a 2-year deal, he's looking pretty good too. So this team, when they're fully healthy, when it's a full rotation, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people next season. When you look at the rest of the NBA, let's look at the rest of the Western Conference and see where these teams are in terms of their roster, and what's expected of them. So this is just the Western Conference. I'm not touching the East. You look at Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is on the verge of being a dynasty. If they can win again this season, or if they can get to the finals this season, they're at the cusp of being a dynasty. The Spurs are going to be good for a while because the NBA made it that way when they gave them the number 1 overall pick in Victor Wembanyama. Denver has 3 to 4 more years of Nikola Jokic being MVP caliber, but he's already started to signal that maybe he is thinking about retirement already. I mean, I don't blame him. He's done everything he's wanted to do. He's won the MVP. He's won the NBA Finals MVP. He's won the NBA Finals. I mean, there's not much left for him to do. And he does have interests outside of basketball. I know. I need to grab my tongue and not say that, but whoa. The Lakers are toast. It's Luka Doncic. That's their team, and he can't stay healthy. That's just I don't think it has anything to do with his work ethic. I don't think it has anything to do with his diet and anything. I just think that's his body. There are certain players in NBA's history that just can't stay healthy. So I think Luka Doncic is up there with those guys. And so LeBron James is not LeBron James anymore. He hasn't been LeBron James for about 5 years. Since the 2020 shortened season, bubble season, whatever you want to call it. So the Lakers are going to fall out of contention here soon. The Rockets are ascending. Now, what they're going to do post Kevin Durant will be interesting, but I think that roster is really set up for success for a while. So we could get those Houston Rockets, Utah Jazz rivalry games back. I think that would be very fun. So you got that. Minnesota, interesting. They are a very top-heavy team. They're not very deep. Obviously, they've got the Ant-Man and Anthony Edwards. They've got Rudy Gobert, who will still be a very solid defender. He's not going to be a defensive player of the year anymore, and he's a non-threat on offense. He's got stone hands. So you look at Minnesota, they have a chance to be able to make deep runs in the playoffs should they make the playoffs, which in the NBA, I mean, basically everybody makes the playoffs, right? So that's Minnesota. Phoenix is a wild card. Devin Booker is an all-world performer. He's going to will this team to wherever they need to get. The rest of the roster is built very well around him, which I'm very impressed with because the Suns didn't have any draft picks because of what they did to get Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. So the Suns have done very well for themselves, building around Devin Booker on the fly. Portland, young, inexperienced. They do have Dame time back, but Damian Lillard's towards the end of his career. So we'll see what happens with Scoot Henderson and the boys. So they're unproven. The Clippers are a mess. They're going to be under investigation for everything they've done with Kawhi Leonard. They have James Harden, who still could score 20 points a night, but he doesn't play any defense. So you got the Clippers there. The Golden State Warriors, I've called them the retirement home for a couple of seasons now. They really are, and they're barely in the play-in. If the rest of the West wasn't actively tanking, I don't think Golden State sniffs the play-in. So Steph Curry's on, duct tape and chewing gum to keep his ankles together. Draymond Green is a basket case, and there's not really much else around that team that inspires confidence for the future. And who knows what's going to happen with Steve Kerr, their coach. So, and then you got the Pelicans, who are always a mess. Zion Williamson was a, dare I say it, bust as a number 1 overall pick. Couldn't stay in shape, couldn't stay healthy, and is not capable of carrying a team, which is fair to say. Not many players can carry teams. The Memphis Grizzlies are in full teardown. Ja Morant is going to be gone in the offseason, so they're going to be bad. Dallas is Cooper Flagg and Kyrie Irving and nobody else. And then you got Sacramento, who isn't tanking. They tried to put together a roster to win, and it turns out they just don't know what they're doing in Sacramento. So they're going to be bad too. So if you look at the Western Conference as a whole for the Utah Jazz, it's realistic that they could challenge for a 4th or a 5th seed next season. And that doesn't even factor in somehow if Adam Silver pulls a dipsy-do on us and gives the Jazz a top 3 pick. If the Jazz get a top 3 pick, that could change a lot of stuff. And that could vault Utah into that 3-4 conversation where they will be just behind Denver and be able to challenge Denver for that number 3 seed next season. So, interesting stuff. If everybody stays healthy, if the development of Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, Ace Bailey, Kyle Filipowski continues in the right direction, it'll be interesting to see. But it looks like the Jazz have signaled the tank is over. We're going to be going for it. So, and by going for it, I mean the playoffs. I don't mean any rings. I don't mean getting past the first round. I mean bypassing the play-in and actually making the playoffs. That's what I mean by signaling by going for it. So, just let that be known. But there is my preview, I guess, of next season and review of this season. There's not much to review for the Jazz. A lost season, just like the past three. But it looks like the tank is all but over. All right, now let's move on to hockey. The Mammoth are in the playoffs for the first time ever, and my preseason prediction was bang on. I said Utah was going to make the playoffs. I said they were not going to win the division. I said, in fact, that they weren't even going to be in the top three in the division. When you got Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota in your division, you're not going to sniff the top three unless you can make a humongous trade for a Andre Vasilevsky in goal or an Austin Matthews to score goals. And they might this offseason, who knows, but they are in the playoffs. Now, they are not locked in to wild card one. That is one thing that makes me worried, especially with the young team. But that game against Carolina on Saturday, I think, serves as a reminder to them about how far they have to go to be a Stanley Cup contender, but also that they haven't done anything yet. Yeah, you clinch playoffs, great, but you still got to lock in that wild card one so that you're not facing Colorado in the first round. Now, it's very likely that they will lock in that wild card one spot. And as I'm recording this, they play the Calgary Flames later tonight. So it's very realistic that they lock up that wild card one position today. But until they do, they still have a lot to play for. Because avoiding Colorado in the first round is paramount for this team. Because they are being picked by a lot of different people to be a sleeper pick in this playoffs, because they will be going up against the Pacific Division, which Connor McDavid called the pillow fight division. So, looking at the standings now and looking at the remaining schedules of the teams, there's only 2 games left for pretty much everybody after the Sunday I'm recording this. It's looking like Vegas could win the Pacific. I know Knights fans, I might be cursing it, but they've looked pretty good under John Tortorella. In the small sample that we have. I think they're 6-0-3 or something like that since Torts took over. So they've looked pretty good. I don't know if Utah wants to face them in the first round. They match up very well. Utah is a very fast team, quick in transition, great through the neutral zone. Vegas obviously has experience to burn, and they can beat you on the rush. It's just their goaltending has been awful this year. Worse than Utah's. So that could be a very interesting matchup. We've seen how many goals can happen between the Oilers and the Mammoth this past week. So that would be a very exciting first-round matchup as well. Dangerous to be sure for Utah because Edmonton has been to back-to-back Stanley Cups. And Leon Draisaitl didn't play in either of those games this past couple of weeks. So one of the best players in the world wasn't playing. That's kind of a big deal. It'll still be a fun matchup with the Oilers, and it would be an even more fun matchup with the Ducks. I don't think the Ducks are going to win the Pacific. They've fallen off in a major way. They can't score goals, and they're not playing defense. So that would have been, I think, the most fun because neither team has really made the playoffs recently. And while they have guys on their roster that have gone deep into the playoffs, have won Stanley Cups, the core of their teams haven't made the playoffs ever. So, again, I think the Anaheim-Utah matchup would have been the best matchup of them all. Unfortunate that it isn't going to happen. But they need to win against Calgary, at least against Calgary and, let's say, Winnipeg to round out the season. The last 3 games of the season are Calgary, Winnipeg, and St. Louis. St. Louis and Calgary are both eliminated from playoff contention, and then Winnipeg is basically eliminated. They've got 82 points with 3 games left to play. They trail the Los Angeles Kings by 5, and as a reminder, you get 2 points per win, and then if you lose in overtime or a shootout, you get 1 point. So what would need to happen is Los Angeles needs to lose their final 3, and Winnipeg needs to win their final 3 to get in. That's not going to happen. So the last 3 teams of the season for the Mammoth are eliminated from playoff contention. That's important because those guys are going to want to knock off the Mammoth. They're going to want to rain on the parade. The players in the NHL are not going to play for draft position. So that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's a better culture than the NBA. They're not going to tank. So what we see here is Utah has nothing locked in other than they are going to be playing past Thursday. That's all they have locked in. I want them to face off against the Pacific Division because, yes, I think if they can get into there, they have a realistic chance to make the Western Conference Finals in their first season of postseason play. I really believe that. In a 7-game series against any of the 3 Pacific Division teams, I think Utah has a chance. Obviously, each one would go 6 or 7 games, but with how Utah has played on the road recently, and with how their offense has performed, sans Carolina, I wouldn't want to face Utah. Pretty much anybody on the roster can score a goal, even on the 4th line. That's a scary prospect. So very successful season for Utah. I'll get into a playoff preview. There'll probably be like an emergency pod or something later this week before the playoffs start. But if you want to hear me talk more about the Utah Mammoth, obviously there's that YouTube channel I do, courtesy of Fan Arch, the Utah Mammoth Daily. You can go here and listen to me there. But that's what we have for the Jazz and the Mammoth. I talked a lot more about the Jazz than I intended to, so let's move quickly here to the transfer portal for BYU men's basketball. So the entire team is transferred out, which is to be expected, especially when you get a transcendent talent like AJ DeBonsa. People were coming to Provo, not to play in Provo, not to play for the Royal Blue and White, to play with AJ DeBonsa. That's why they came. And now that AJ DeBonsa is basically going pro, he hasn't made an official announcement yet as of me recording this on April 12th. He's going to go pro. All of the guys that wanted to play with him are going to transfer out, and they have. I'm not angry at a single one of them. I knew what BYU was signing up for when they signed AJ DeBonsa. The entire roster signed on to play with DeBonsa. Now he's gone, they're gone. So you have to rebuild from scratch, basically. But BYU got a major recruiting win in the transfer portal. So that you can say a lot of things about Kevin Young. You cannot say he's a bad recruiter at all. He got Colin Chandler from Kentucky, who followed Mark Pope to Kentucky from BYU. Lest you forget, he was the top overall high school recruit out of the state of Utah in 2021 when he came out. Now he's heading back to Provo to join up with that 5-star recruit they've got, who is slated to be like a number 2 overall pick in his draft. It's pretty cool. And so they need to build a roster around that, but it's a very great start with what they've got. And I took a lot of heat for my opinion on Robert Wright. Rob Wright is a fantastic player. I never said he was a bad player. I said he was a bad fit for Kevin Young's offense. He was. He's a shoot-first point guard. Shoot-first point guards do not work in Kevin Young's offense. Kevin Young's offense is predicated on moving the ball. And we saw in those big games when the ball just got stuck, whether it was on Rob Wright or AJ DeBonsa. And if the ball gets stuck on AJ DeBonsa, it's not a bad play. I want that out there. I want people to know that I'm not that stupid. So that's not a bad play. But if he gets stuck on somebody like Rob Wright, who is a very good player, he's not a transcendent player, and he's not elite. That's not good. So what needs to happen with Kevin Young's offense is the ball needs to move, and the players need to move. And that didn't happen way too often for this team. And I took a lot of heat for saying that. Turns out I was right. So that's just something to keep in mind when you watch a Kevin Young offense. It's predicated on ball and player movement. That's the whole thing. And when you have an offense like that, it makes defense that much more simple because the opposing team is going to be tuckered out by playing defense. So this roster that he's going to build is going to be very interesting. It's off to a very good start, obviously, with the recruiting that he did in season as well as this offseason already. So I think BYU is going to be just fine. I don't think they're going to challenge for the top of the Big 12, but they're going to be very close. They're going to be in that second echelon, bumping their head on the ceiling of the first echelon. I don't think they're on the same level as Houston, which is fine. I don't think they're on the same level as Arizona, which is fine. But they are on the same level of a Texas Tech. So that's how close BYU is. I just want to remind everybody that everybody that signed on to play for BYU didn't sign on to play for BYU. They signed to play with AJ DeBonsa. That's it. Now those mercenaries are gone. In this new world of college athletics, you got to bring in a new batch. And that's what Kevin Young is starting to do. He got Colin Chandler back from Kentucky. That's a very good start. I'll keep track of the rest of the transfer portal stuff, which closes a week from this coming Tuesday. It closes April 21st. So that's when the transfer portal closes for men's basketball. Okie dokie. So that really does it for sports talk this week. Like I said, Real Salt Lake is off. They will be back in action on Saturday or Sunday. I think it's Sunday because they're back on the 18th. Maybe they're back on the 16th. I don't know. They're back this week is basically what I'm saying. And BYU and Utah closed up spring camp. I don't really pay too much attention to spring camp anymore because of the transfer portal and all that stuff. They have canceled spring scrimmages to close out. I think that's fine. BYU does their alumni game, which is fun. Utah, Morgan Scalley has enacted a fan appreciation thing that they do. Again, I think it's a wise decision. You limit injury risk. Your guys should know your systems by now after 4 to 5 weeks of practice. You don't need a scrimmage. Plus, you already have a lot of your starters locked in because of NIL deals. So you don't really need to worry about that either. Like NIL, I know I'm one of the few people that are bullish on it, but I like it because it helps simplify a lot of things and it gives power to the players who are the ones who are making the money anyway for these universities. So that's basically what I have for spring ball. There's not much news coming out of it. I mean, BYU has their starting quarterback. Utah has their starting quarterback. BYU has their starting running back. Utah has their starting running back. I mean, there's not much intrigue going on. They're implementing new defenses on both teams. Fall camp is where the big stuff happens. So I just want to put that out there as well. So now we got video games. And for video games this year, I haven't really been looking at stuff that is to be coming out just because I don't have a job, so I don't have money to spend on that stuff. So I've been going back through my Steam library and playing some games that I've had for a while. And one game I want to highlight here is Sid Meier's Civilization 6. Now, Civilization 7 came out last year. I'm very well aware. I did buy it. I did play it. I refunded it. It was terrible. It was not the same game. They tried to innovate too many things. And when you try to change everything, it's like trying to reinvent the wheel. You get a square block that doesn't move. That's what Civilization 7 is to me. I know they've made changes to it recently. They have lifted the stupid thing that they did in the game where you weren't locked into your civilization. So you could start as like Greece, and then as the ages progressed, you could change and you could go to be the Ottomans, and then you could change from the Ottomans to the British, and then from the British to the Americans if you wanted to. And that's not civilization. The whole point of civilization is you're playing as a civilization. You're not going through time switching up who you want to be. So I thought that was dumb. Then they had their ages thing, which was weaved into that changing of the civilization. It was just dumb. Civilization 6, I think, is a masterpiece. I love the game. A lot of people didn't like the art style when it came out. Turns out those people came around on it because it was kind of cartoony. But Civilization 6, man, I have over 400 hours in it. And I don't even really play many of the different win conditions. I mainly play domination victory. But you can play so many different ones. Religious victory, diplomatic, tourism. There's like a monopoly mode. There's so many different ways you can play. And so I just wanted to shout out Civilization 6 and the dev team on that one because they created a masterpiece that I continue to play to this day, even when there's a new one out. So that's my video game talk today. You could probably find it pretty cheap on like GOG, but not on Steam. Steam, it's still full price. It might go on sale for the summer sale, but we'll see. But that's the episode this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. And I will see you all either later this week for an emergency pod for the playoffs or next week when you spelunk back into the Matt Cave.